over to our presenter for today, Courtney, who is going to share what she has done with escape rooms. So Courtney is the research and instruction librarian for the Regis University Library. So Courtney, I will turn it over to you, and I might have it at the end of our slides. Whoopsies. Bear with me one second. Please pay no attention to the person behind the screen. I forgot to backwards up the slides. Sorry about that, Courtney.
No worries. Thank you. Well, hi, everyone. I'm so excited to be with you today. I'm thrilled that there's so many people from all over the place. So thank you so much for taking time out of your day to join us and talk about online escape games. So escape games are so much fun, both in person and online. So we're going to talk about some aspects of both today. So I'm Courtney Drysdale. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I'm a research and instruction librarian and associate professor at Regis University, which is in Denver, Colorado. I'm also a former teacher librarian. I was an elementary teacher librarian for several years. So to get started, we're going to start with a warm-up. So thank you all for putting your introductions in the chat. I'm going to ask also that we share our experiences with either escape rooms you've done, breakout games, anything that you've done, either going to one yourself or making one at your library, or if you're just interested. This will give us all a chance to see where we're all starting with this topic. So we'll go ahead and put that in the chat and then come back together in a moment.
So Susie has said that she's used ones other people have created, but never done one on her own. And Anna is joining us from Texas. Excellent. It looks like we have several people typing. Jessie is interested in making one. She's used one before. And Scotty has been to an escape room. They did one at home. That's interesting. All right. And interested in making them. Yeah, I myself have never been to one, Courtney. So now it's coming in fast and furious. Been to escape rooms in the past. Done a few breakouts at the library. Most recently one for Six of Crows. And Jenny is interested in applying the concept to online courses. Sarah has never done one for a class. She's been to a couple escape rooms. So it looks like we have several people who have been to some, but they're sort of curious to see what's going to happen today, I think. Interested in creating an escape room or similar, focusing on school history for online-only students. Kamisha wants to do one for the library. Many are very interested in how this would work in a physical or in a virtual environment. Excellent. Thanks, guys.
Thank you all. This is great. So we have some that have done it in person, some that have done online. We will, I'll show you some examples today of both. So I'm going to start by talking about the way that we've used library, how we've used breakout and escape games at Regis. So you'll hear me say escape games and breakout games. I use these words interchangeably, mostly because of the way that I learned how to make these type of games in the beginning. So we got a mini tech grant at Regis through our instructional design and technology department. And through that, a few of us in the library purchased breakout EDU kits. We wanted to develop in-person escape rooms to be able to use them for library orientation for our first year students. So I'd seen K through 12 librarians using them in their libraries and thought this would be great for college students as well. So the students love them. It's always fun to be able to do this type of activity with them. So it really works for any age level, from little kids all the way up to adults. So before we moved the games online, we used our Breakout EDU kits to do these in person. So you can see a couple of groups of students here working on the escape game and then showing that they broke out. We did this as an interactive activity for first year students to explore different aspects of the library, both in person and online. You can see in the picture on the right where they're working that they're all using their phones, they're using the library website, they're using papers in front of them, and they would even gather information from around the building. So this is the way that we worked on it before. So I'm going to talk first about how to create an escape or breakout game. So when you want to start with your outcomes. So what will your participants know or be able to do at the end of the game? So when I was creating this with a couple of other people, we wanted to orient students to the library. So we decided, what are 4 things that we want them to know at the end of this game? And then we started there to decide how we want to get them to learn these things. Next, you want to choose where the participants will gather the information. So for me, it was the library website. I wanted them to explore it, be able to learn about some things on there. For you, it could be your website or something else you create. This is where they'll get the clues that they'll use to answer the questions. So it can be anything you want. You can even integrate things into the form to give them information or make a Google site. There's lots of different options. After you've kind of decided what they're going to learn and where they're going to gather information, you're going to create your questions or your clues. You also need to record the answers to your questions so that you know what your participants are working towards to find. Then you can create your materials. So for me, I used just a Google form and a little bit of graphics and some citations that I made, but you may make graphics, links, or pictures, websites, anything that might work for you. So these are all the same things for if you're going to create a game in person or online. But if you first made your game in person, then you may need to think about shifting your game online, which was the case for us. We had run the game in person for a little while before we had decided to shift it online in fall 2020. So when you're shifting the game online, you'll want to start with the same or similar outcomes. So even though it's a different format, they can still learn the same things that you were hoping they would learn by doing it in person. Then you're going to plan a path through the game. So this is something we always think about with games is there a certain clue that they have to get first that would lead them to other clues? So often we would map this out on paper in an in-person game of like, first they're going to find this clue, and then that will lead them to open this, which will give them another tool, which will lead to the next. So with an online game, it's a little bit more linear in the way that I created it, so that they're going from one question to the next. So they have to get one question correct before they can move on to the next one. So you have to plan kind of a logical progression through the content. And this can just be like fun clues, or it can be teaching them something. Then you're going to write your questions and answers and make sure you have all of those organized in order. Then you can create your Google form with validated answers. And I'll take you through how to do all of that in the Google form here in just a moment. And then I would encourage you to try it. Go ahead and play it. Play it with some colleagues you have, play it with friends. Just let some people try it out to see if it works. After that, you'll usually need to modify based on the experience of the people playing it, and then you can play again. So often we had games. I created 4 different ones when I worked with students, and I ended up tweaking it a little bit each time to be able to figure out exactly where, if there are places they were getting stuck, how we could help them get through that. Right, I'm going to pause here and go to our next page. I see a question in the chat. So, is this like the old school scavenger hunt? It can be like an old school scavenger hunt. It kind of depends on the way that you set it up. So, if you want it to be like a scavenger hunt, you can. You can also make themes about them so that it feels more like they're having a defined experience. So the in-person game that we did at Regis was all about finding santos, which are southwestern depictions of saints. So we made up a story about how someone had stolen one of the santos and locked it inside the box. And so all of the things they were looking up were about the santos, and then eventually, when they got into the final box, there was a picture of a Santo inside. So it is similar to a scavenger hunt, but it all depends on just the way that you set it up. If others have more questions, feel free to put them in chat as well as we go along. I will go ahead and I'm going to switch to screen sharing now to show you what a game actually looks like from the participant side. So you'll see here, this is just a simple Google form, and this was set up in fall 2020 when we were fully remote. So we did use this with students in a Zoom classroom in a synchronous Zoom format. What we did was we broke students into Zoom breakout rooms. So about 3 or 4 students per group were working on this independently, and then they would come back to the main room to finish it. While we did the game synchronously, because that's the way that class was being taught, I do think that these would also work asynchronously. You just need to make sure that you have the right directions in your form to make sure that people would be able to do it without asking any questions. The way that I did it is I would, after they were in breakout rooms, I would go to kind of rotate through the breakout rooms to check on the students and see if they had any questions, and also just make sure they were talking to each other. So that worked really well with going around and making sure they, if they needed anything. I did also have one class where technology failed us, so it ended up having to be an asynchronous activity. So the students went off and did it on their own, and then we came back together and discussed it at another time. And that worked well with the same type of game. So what we'll do here is go ahead and look at what this actually looks like for the participants. So I always start with a little bit of directions here at the beginning. We indicate here that they'll have challenges to figure out by using the information here and the Regis Library website. And in Google Forms, you can actually do live links. So I link right to the library website right here. And then give them a little tip that each answer is validated by the form, so you'll need to put it in exactly, including capital letters. So that's always a good thing to make sure that your participants know exactly what type of clue they're looking for and the way that they're going to enter it, so that they can make sure to get through the clues correctly and not get frustrated. I also told them they could call me to their breakout room for a hint. If you were doing this asynchronously, you could set up another way to maybe get hints to your participants. So I'm going to click next and take you into the game. So you'll see this is just a really simple Google form. I set up a very thin premise for them, but it basically just says you find a piece of paper on the floor with a partial list of citations and ideas on it. Can you use the library website to find them so you can complete the bibliography and finish the project? A thin premise for sure, but let's go with it. I made this list of citations. So in the previous game, the outcomes that I was working towards and what I'm working towards in this is I want students to be able to find an article. I want them to find a book. I want them to know about research guides on our website, and I want them to know how to get help, primarily through our Regis chat service. So those are the outcomes I was working towards in doing this game. So you can see on here, these are going to end up being all the clues. So I gave them all up front. And then if you click next, you can set your form up to be whatever you want. But I like to do one on each page. Some games you'll see, if you've seen examples online, they have all the clues on the same page. I liked to do this where they did one at a time so that I kind of knew the way that they were progressing through the game. If that's not important to you, you can put all your clues on one page and they'd have to get them all correct before submitting. But I wanted them to have to do one at a time. So for this one, we gave them a partial citation, and there were two reasons why we did it this way. One is because we wanted them to start recognizing what a citation looks like. So this was an APA citation, so we wanted them to know what different pieces of the citation might be. So we gave them the whole thing, and then I drew in a question mark for what was missing. So, and then on the question, I just put a question mark to kind of prompt them, this is what you're looking for. So hopefully what students would do would they would go to the library website and use our discovery service and search by this title and be able to find that it's an article and that the year is 2010. So that would give students practice on finding the article, looking at it, finding different information, and then they would come back with their group and type in 2010. So if you click next, I set this one up where if as they answer one, it takes them not just to the next question, but it gives them a little bit of information about what they just did. So if they're doing this on their own, they're still getting the benefit of that instruction of you found the year for this journal article. There are multiple ways to search for journal articles, and then gives them a little bit of information about finding it. So hopefully it's kind of teaching them through the process. When they click next again, it gives them another one. You may be noticing this one is themed all around science writing. This course that this game was originally used for was all about science writing, and they ended up writing their own children's science book. So for this one, we wanted them to learn how to find a book in the library. So we just gave them a book cover and asked what location in the Dayton Memorial Library would you look to find this book? And then we're going to put in, they would say it's in the juvenile section. And then click next. Again, it's going to talk about finding a print book. Since we couldn't do this in person, I wanted them to know how to come get a book if they wanted to. The library was open, but this class was online. So I wanted them to know they could still come in to be able to get materials. I'm going to quickly go through the next couple. This was another one. We wanted them to be able to find an ebook. So we had them look up an ebook, and then I wrote in who wrote the I'm Not a Writer chapter, and that was Emerson. Students were able to find that. Again, we talked to them about what they just did with accessing the ebook, and you could do this or not, depending on what type of game you're doing. I see in the question, what does the form look like when they give a wrong answer? So I'll do the wrong answer on this one. Thank you for asking, Anna. So this one, we wanted them to look for a research guide. So let's say they couldn't find it and they put in something else. So if I put in the wrong answer, it just says try again. Now you can set this up to say something different, and I'll show you that on the next page, on the next section. So you can have it like supply a clue there if you need to, or have it say something else. This was actually the CRC Handbook of Chemistry and Physics. And this one was fun too, because I had them look on Dr. Chamberlain, their professor's subject expertise, and she's a chemistry professor. So they had to look up the chemistry research guide. So then they know now research guides exist for different subjects. And then they would look, and this CRC Handbook of Chemistry and Physics was right on the home page for that guide. So yes, there's information there. And then last question for them in the game, I just gave them this picture of our chat box. And then I, as the clue, put the question right here in the box. So this is where you would type to ask a question in chat. So I put that in there so that they would be prompted to ask themselves, when can you ask a question? So students reacted to this question in a couple of different ways. Some of them would get on the chat and ask, when can I ask you questions on chat? And then the chat librarian would respond, 24/7. But they could have also clicked on the research help desk hours here, and that would have also showed them that it was 24/7. So we'll put that in. So that builds some awareness for how they can get help. And then finally, they finished the game, but I wanted to add one more question just to get some information from them. Because these were first year students. We were having a very weird year with them being mostly online. We wanted to know how they would like to get help from librarians during this strange season of being mostly online. So then they would choose however many of these they wanted to, like, oh, I'm interested in chat and email and make an appointment. And then they would click next. And then it tells them you completed all the tasks. Great job and thanks for playing. And then they click submit. So that's it from the student side of things. So I'm going to go back over to our presentation and come back to you all. So yes, that is how we set it up for them. If you have any questions, feel free to ask now. But right now, I also want us to think of processing for you. What kind of game are you wanting to build? And are you starting from scratch or moving an existing game online? So let's take a couple minutes and share in the chat. And if you have questions as well, this would be a great time for that.
So Anna really liked the mini survey at the end, which I agree was very clever. Um, it looks like Amy wants to do one from scratch. So do any of you have any escape room games that you're thinking of maybe trying to move online? Setting up an online course on information literacy for school librarians and starting from scratch. And Heidi's asking, how can you add information into the page if they do not have the answers?
So I'm thinking that would be if they're doing it asynchronously. So you can add in hints. You can have it say something different if you get the information, if you get the question wrong. So I'll look at that. You could also add more information into the questions. When I was doing this, I knew that I was doing these synchronously. So I knew if they ran into any problems, I was there to answer any of their questions. So I think if you were planning for it to be asynchronous, you would just design the questions a little bit more so that you could probably find out through play testing it that if people run into issues, you'd know what they are so that you can craft your questions to be able to answer it so that they're led to the clue more easily. Good question.
And Monica's saying that she wants to set one up to show how to use research databases from scratch. That's a great idea.
Cool.
Oh, and the ever-present disinformation and misinformation. So setting up an escape room for that, that would be great. That could also get tricky because some misinformation is so like real information. Ooh, creating one for an upcoming conference. They can learn
Oh,
while
I
they
love that.
learn. That's a great idea. And a couple asynchronous. A lot of people starting from scratch, not yet sure of specific objective, hoping to engage teens in the library. So there could be a variety of things for that. I think it could be, you know, something about the library itself, or it could be something just separate that's fun. They've got Jesse has an event called Comic Orange, and they'll be creating an adventure game from scratch. So it looks like most people from scratch.
That's great.
Oh, and someone said that they saw one uh, that was developed from a poster presentation. So would like to do that for online students using archives, probably from scratch. So many different great ways to use this idea.
Yeah, I love that. I think I've seen a few people like engaging online students, which I think is great. It gives them a way to connect with it in a fun atmosphere. All right, and I see a question here from Mark. Are the images in the Google form interactive? For instance, can participants be asked to click on a book with the correct call number they need to find and making it from scratch? Yes, they could be. So you could also, I showed you a pretty simple form where they had to type in all of their answers, but you could make multiple choice as well, where they could have different answer choices, and those could be written in answer choices or with images through the Google form. So you could have different ways of doing it. This one is just the simplest version of the type of game, but you can also even have branching forms where if they click on one answer, it takes them to down a different path. So you can get very fancy with these.
Yeah, I like that kind of having the multiple choice with images. And Anna was talking about maybe doing something about financial literacy for high school, which is always so important, and building that from scratch. So many different topics and subjects and kind of ways that these can be built. It's kind of fascinating.
This is great. You all have such good ideas. So let me show you the back end of what a Google form looks like and how you actually set this up. So this whole game lives on Google Forms, but you could use um, other things to do it. So I'm going to click over to the back end of the form. So if you've used Google Forms, there's a lot of great resources out there on how to use Google Forms. I've got one in our resources later. So if you're going, what are we doing? I've got some great resources for you later. But I'll show you what it looks like on the creation side of things. So you can see the intro here. And then I broke this into different sections so that they had to navigate through the sections and kind of slow down and read each thing. You could also use different sections for providing information for clues, providing content information. But for my game, I was having them, everything they were pulling content from, finding information was all from the library website. So they were pulling from there and then just really using this for putting in their answers. So as you scroll down, you can see the introduction here. And I went ahead and did the introduction, the premise, and you can be more creative with this. This one was very, very simple, but you can see I could insert a picture here. And then I made this all its own section. So then they had to, again, click to the next section to get to the first question. So as you scroll down, this is where you're able to make this work. So I made this an image. My question was an image, but you can add anything here. So I added an extra image here. You can even add videos, if you see over here. So you could have students watch a video and then have some sort of clue in your video. You can also do links. Links are live in Google Forms. So if you put a link in here, they could click on that, find some information, and come back. So it just depends on how you want to do it. But here's the magic of using Google Forms is if you click on this, what you want when you have a new question, you want to do this little 3 dots for the menu button on your question. If you click that, you want to make sure this check mark is checked next to response validation. So what that does is it makes you have to enter the correct answer or choose the correct answer when you're doing your form. So once I turn that on, I want it to be text. So you can have different choices. So like if you want to have a number clue, so if you've done escape rooms in the past, sometimes they have number clues. So you could do number, text, or length, and then you can do either it contains, doesn't contain, is an email or URL. So I always just do contains, and then I type in what the answer is. And then this over here is where you would be able to put information for a clue if they get it wrong. So on this, again, I knew I was going to be there with students while they were taking this. But if they were asynchronous, then this is where I might put a clue like, what year was the journal article published? And then if they get it wrong, then this little clue would pop up for them. And you can see it changes that right away. So that's the really handy thing, is you can give them different information here. You could also change it to multiple choice. And then that would be, if you do the multiple choice, then that's getting into more of a branching form, because then you go to like the right direction or wrong direction in your game based on that answer. So if you have questions about that, let me know. I've got a resource that I can share with you with that, but I usually just do short answer. And see, since I changed it, now I do my response validation. I want it to be text, and it contains 2010, and then you can put your custom error in there. So let me show you one that's a little less straightforward. 2010, they're really going to get that year or not. But if I go down to my next one, you'll see when I ask them to find the book, if they look up this book in our catalog, it's going to tell them that it's in the 4th floor juvenile section. And I wanted to think about, well, what's the most important part of that I would hope that they would find out? And it's that we have a juvenile section. I don't really care if they do 4th floor, but the catalog says all of that. So for my answer, I didn't put that the correct answer was 4th floor juvenile, because I just want to make sure they know there's a juvenile section. So I just made sure that their answers contained juvenile. So as long as they had something in their answer that said juvenile, then it would be correct for them to move on. So you don't have to put the entire answer in there. If there's a part that you know they're guaranteed to put it in there, then I would go with that. The same thing on the last question that was chat. If I go down to that, this one, the answer that I'm looking for them to find is 24/7, but I don't know exactly the way that they're going to type that in. They might write 24/7. They might write 24 hours, 7 days a week. I'm not sure. But if I look at my validation, as long as they get 24 in there somewhere, I'm reasonably sure that they got the concept of 24/7. So I'm looking at like, what's the best thing that they can do that's going to get the whole answer. And then at the bottom, I just tacked on this extra question, which was purely for my curiosity. And what's really fun about having these forms is that this was a class that I worked with last fall, and students worked through this one together. So if I click on responses up here, I can actually see all the things they typed in. So not only do I know that they all got through the information and learned the 4 things that or at least were exposed to, and hopefully learned the 4 things that I wanted them to learn through playing this game, I get to see what they put in through the process. So you can see everybody put 2010 exactly as it was for that first question. But on the second one, they put in 4 different things. Most of them copy and pasted DML 4th floor juvenile from the catalog, but some of them wrote it slightly different. But since they all got the word juvenile in there, they all got the question. So I'm always fascinated by the different ways that they input this in here, just to see like the different ways they think about it. I also found this, they were supposed to put an author. I just put the author's last name. And most of the groups put in the author's full name, which I found was very interesting. For the ebook, they all did the same thing. And then here's that where the answer was 24/7. You'll see they did 4 different things. Most common saying 24/7, but this helped me know that I could just focus on the 24, and that would be able to get it all in there. And then of course, I'll show you my little getting help from a librarian, my little bonus question out of curiosity. And surprisingly, they all wanted to email, which I thought was very funny because we don't actually get that much email in the library. So, and then a couple of them wanted to meet on the quad or in person. So that was good to know kind of the types of ways that they wanted to get help. So that is the whole back end uh, of the digital Google form. So I'm going to go back to our presentation. Thank you, Christine. All right, so I'm going to stop here and see if y'all have any questions before we proceed.
And while we're waiting for people to type, did you put as one of the responses meet the librarian on the quad, or was that something that somebody like said? Because I just think that's adorable. I love the idea of college students
Yeah,
wanting to meet
that
the
was,
librarian on the quad.
yes, that was a student supplied that.
Nice.
So I didn't put in an in-person option because I wasn't sure and I wanted students to tell me
Mhm.
if that was something they wanted. But yes, a student chose to meet on the quad, which is very college.
That is. So, any questions thus far? Scotty says, I read a tip somewhere that suggested setting up the form as a multiple choice quiz, which would eliminate the need for validation. Just another thought.
Oh yeah, yeah, that would be great. So you could do that for multiple choice, especially if you're doing if you have questions that lend itself to multiple choice. That's excellent. Thank you for sharing that, Scotty. Any other questions before we, let's see, and something our teens taught us, right-clicking on the form and selecting view page source will reveal the HTML and then within the HTML are all the answers for the questions on the page. That's fantastic. I love teenagers. So, you know, your mileage may vary as far as people using using their knowledge of HTML to find the answers. That's very clever of them. If your teens are doing that, I think they're doing great. Well, the last thing I have for you to share are just some resources. So some things that were really helpful for me as I was learning how to create escape games and breakout games, and then also how to put them online in Google Forms. So if of creating escape activities, if you haven't checked out Breakout EDU, they're awesome. They have kits that you can buy, but they also have digital resources. And this was what we got through our mini grant that we got from our instructional design department, is they also let us get kits and we had access to online. There's a couple of things here about library orientation. That was kind of the things that I was interested in using this for. But there's lots of other things out there if you're looking to use it for different purposes. But any type of orientation is also going to teach people things. And then for Google Forms, I found this bespoke classroom to be the most helpful one as far as putting my Google Forms together. And then this YouTube video was also really helpful. In the past, I've also done a presentation on creating this for our in-person games for our Colorado Association of Libraries conference. This is a link to slides from that presentation that I did with a couple of colleagues if you're interested in reading more about creating a game for orientation specifically. So those are all live in the links, and then they'll also be in the slides later. But to close out, I just wanted to give some time and space to think about how you could use this in your library or at your school, who you could partner with, and then what would make it fun for you and your patrons. So I think Christine's gonna do some extra chat boxes with. So if you'll go ahead and put your answers in here, let's brainstorm a little bit about how we could use this.
Yeah, so I pulled up three different chats in the middle of the screen. You also can use the chat in the lower left-hand corner if you prefer, but the three different boxes have the different questions. So what are some ways that you could use this at your library? Think of who you could partner with, which is always, that's always a good conversation to have. And then what would make it fun for your patrons? So in the fun category, Courtney had added fun themes. So thinking around themes could help you get the brainstorming going. Obviously, okay, the fun corner is winning right now out of all of the questions. um, Prizes and creative outcomes, swag as prizes. And in terms of partners, we've got student affairs for higher education, which is great. Yeah, think of all the different places in higher ed, especially buildings and departments and stuff that you could partner with, like special collections and archives. Thank you, Melissa. Yeah, that's a great one. Local teachers. Mm-hmm. Student activity groups. And you could partner with instructional design to actually create an online game using quizzes to feature in the LMS. Yeah, so you could create something using like Articulate Storyline or other types of software specifically for creating quizzes and games. Mm-hmm. And I'm popping up to the top question. How could you use this at your library? Creating an escape game to help patrons get oriented with the library's website. Ooh, public library trustee training. That could be fun. Having all of your trustees play an escape game. That would be great. And Scotty says that he's the school library technology coordinator for the South Dakota State Library. Love to create some escape rooms for school librarians to learn content while also learning how to create an escape room. That's very meta. So, learning how to create escape room and learning content at the same time. There's so many different applications, I think, for this. Yeah, and Courtney had said that instructional designers and technologists are fantastic partners for higher ed folks. Lori thinks partnering with the local history society would be a great partner. Yeah, these are all fabulous ideas. And I think in terms of partners, sort of the possibilities are endless, especially when we think about all of the different places that college libraries can partner with, public libraries partner with a whole bunch of organizations. So there's so many different ways that we can sort of cross promote and share information. Other departments at the state library, like the Braille and Talking Books Library, Children and Youth Services. Yep. And oh yeah, create a game for summer reading as a passive program. And Anna, I love your idea for using it for staff or to onboard new staff. That's a great idea. Always looking, there's so much information that you have to take in when you start at a place, and so having an escape room game for new staff is great. Involve students in the history of the university, team building. These are all fabulous ideas. So feel free to keep adding to these boxes. We'll give another minute. And also, if you have any additional questions for Courtney, you can put them in the chat on the left-hand side, and we can make sure to get your questions addressed before we end for today.
All of these ideas are so fun. This is absolutely delightful to see all of your ideas, and this is so energizing and gives me a million ideas to make more. So hopefully you're getting some good ideas too.
Yeah, that's why we do CSL in session the way we do, because Courtney shared some fabulous information with us, but then being able to sort of brainstorm together all of the different applications, I think it just makes it that much more powerful.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So I'm not seeing any new answers coming up in the chat here. So I'm going to move us to the wrap up. Once again, if you have questions, let us know. I may have missed one. Oh, so there's a question from Amy. How many of these have you done, and how successful have they been in terms of numbers, statistics, as well as the outcomes you were hoping for?
Good question. So I ran this online escape game with, I believe, 5 sections in fall 2020 as a digital game. So I ran that, and I would say 4 out of the 5 went really well. It takes about 5 minutes per question. So it takes, with the explanation and everything, 20 to 30 minutes. So those all went really well. There was one class where it was the first time I ran, I themed each one on the topic of their class, and one of them was not as successful as the others, I'll admit. And so that one took students a lot longer. So that was a learning experience where I needed to tweak my questions. The one that I showed you was probably my favorite one since it was about the science writing. But definitely we got the good outcomes that I was hoping for. Students reported that they had fun, that they enjoyed it, and that they were able to learn some things about the library rather than just me talking at them. They were able to experience it rather than do that. So I was definitely pleased with the outcome. I also ran a game like this in a conference presentation, and that went well also. There were about 45 people in that one, so that was a much larger group than I had been used to in the past. But that it still worked out. It just took a little bit longer because there were so many people. And then I see a question below about length. I talked about it a little bit just then, but the question was, can you talk about length? How long is too long for an online escape game for keeping everyone engaged? The games I've run have been about 30 minutes. I think any longer than that, and then they may not be engaged. I think I would need to have like a stronger theme to be able to sustain a longer game. So I think if you're going to do that, think about what type of content you're wanting to cover. If it's just for fun, you may be able to go a little bit longer. But as far as like learning content, I really kept it at 4 things that I hoped they'd come away with. And I felt anything beyond that, I may lose them. So yeah, that's about how long.
So if you have any additional questions, you can put them in the chat because we do still have plenty of time. I do have a survey here on the screen for today's session that I would love to have you take. The link itself is live, and I will pop it into chat as well. If you need a certificate for today's session, a little bit earlier up in the email, I put my, or in the chat, sorry, I put my email address, so you can just email me directly and let me know that you need a certificate, and I'd be more than happy to give you one. And then just to let you know, the archive will be available hopefully by the end of today at Libraries Learn CSL in session. I'll pop that into chat as well. And I will also include a PDF of the slides, which will give you links to all of the resources and everything, so that you have everything you can go back and review. And our next CSL in session will be on Thursday, December 16th at the same time, noon Colorado time, and we're going to talk about why teams fail and how you can foster success. So I don't think I see any other questions coming through. If you do have one, don't hesitate to ask. But if we don't have any additional questions, I really want to thank Courtney for taking the time to share this great idea with us, and I had seen it. I actually hadn't seen her session, but I had seen that it was one that was offered at our state library association, and so I contacted her and she said yes right away. So kind of moving the whole session online where we could all brainstorm together about how we could use this fun tool was great. So Courtney, I really want to thank you for sharing your information and your ideas with us today, and I want to thank everybody who attended today and shared your thoughts. This has been a really fun session, I think.
Yes, thank you so much. This was so energizing. Thank you for all your comments and your ideas, and for spending this time together. Thank you so much.
All right, one one final scroll through chat. I don't see any additional questions. So, once again, thank you to Courtney and thank you to our participants. And I hope everybody has a great rest of your day.